What's up, everyone? Ben with the BTC Sessions here, and this is your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.
Before diving into the news today, just a couple quick things. Of course, check out my website, btcsessions.ca. This is where you can reach out to me personally and book your own BTC session. Plenty of things we can do there. If you're new and you're trying to learn how to set up wallets on mobile and desktop, how to use Bitcoin itself, we can do that. We can take a look at security and proper storage via hardware wallets, or we can really dive into things like proper privacy using Wasabi and CoinJoin, or even just any basic learning around Bitcoin and how the underlying technology itself works. All you need to do here is scroll down to the bottom, if I can get there. There's a contact form for you there. And secondly, shout out to sponsors of the show, Ledn.io. This is where you can use your Bitcoin as collateral to get a Canadian or US dollar loan. So on the site here, there's a slider you can head down to and check out how much Bitcoin would be required to deposit to get a particular dollar amount. Application only takes a couple minutes. There's no credit check required. And if you're approved, your bank account is typically funded within 24 hours. I've done it myself a couple times now, and it always works like a charm. And actually, they have a deal on right now where if you use the link I provide below and you do get a loan, you will get $50 extra worth of Bitcoin allocated to your account. So if you'd like to get your hands on dollars and don't want to sell your Bitcoin to do so, this could be an option for you. And with that, we'll dive into the news. And as far as Bitcoin price goes, we did see a dip last night, but we've since bounced back from that. So let's take a look at what's going on here. Now, this particular article is saying that there is still some gas in the tank that could take us to $10,000 and beyond. So yeah, last night, taking a look at the chart here, we did have a dip down to around the 84.20 level, which is previous highs from a little ways back around the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, kind of in and around that range. And that has now apparently turned into support, or at least it's looking so right now. So once we tapped that level last night, we sharply bounced back to, we're now above this actually. So maybe I'll just pull up actual prices at the time of recording this, but we are now sitting at around 86, 85, although I have seen it up above 8,700, so we've recovered nicely from that overnight dip. Now, you can kind of see here what's been happening the last little bit, and this does look like a very, very sharp, sudden move upwards, but you'll see how when you actually look at longer time frames, it doesn't look quite as ridiculous. So you can see the drops kind of through the mid last year to that huge dump when we went from the 6K range all the way down to 3 very quickly between November and December. So a lot of these rejections here of highs, those resistance levels have now turned into support. So you can see where Bitcoin tried to go up high and then dumped down, tried to recover and then dumped down. So each one of these levels that I got rejected off as we were heading on the way down all the way to 3K, well, that is now turning into support on the other side. So as we go up and drop down, we are bouncing off those previous resistance levels as support. So you can see every time we go up, we'll dip down and bounce off those levels. Up, dip down, bounce off, bounce off. So we keep on seeing these bounces off what used to be our resistance on the way up. So when we're looking at that, you can kind of see here that there's not a ton of resistance left. In fact, some of the resistance here is up above $11,000. Now, I still tend to think that that $10,000 range is going to be difficult to break through, at least initially. But once it does decisively, I shouldn't say once it does, but there's always a degree of risk as it could not do that at all. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's just whether, or from in my head, it's how long will it take to get there. So I do think that we'll see ourselves bounce off 10K a couple times before ever getting past it. But hey, 11 and a half looks to be kind of where we're looking next. So yeah, and when you zoom out, as I was saying on that weekly chart, this rise here doesn't look nearly as drastic because you can see kind of the full breadth of what happened last time where we had these parabolic rises. And this is, it looks like, yeah, this is a, this chart itself is actually, what's it called? It's, why am I forgetting the name for it? Anyways, the chart itself is not just a linear chart. So it tracks parabolic moves. So, you know, the prices on the side here, maybe if I can click into it here. So the prices on the side here go up exponentially as opposed to linearly. So you can see, you know, 5,200, 6,400, 8,000, 10,000, 13, 16, 20. So the moves here are quicker between each little portion of the chart as opposed to just going up simply, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you know. So, yeah, it does kind of map it out in a way that looks a little bit more reasonable. It doesn't look like as much of a parabolic move. But yeah, I don't see these prices as being completely out of the question. I think that 10K is just a matter of time. And yeah, that next resistance at 11 and a half, yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't eventually reach there. I mean, I've been surprised. I've got to say, I've been surprised this year that we moved up this quickly already. But hey, that's Bitcoin. It's a little difficult to guess where it's going to be going. Now, one thing is that this past winter, there's been a lot of accumulation. People have been accumulating. And so there's a study that was done. And during crypto winter, people have been stacking sats like crazy. And so they've taken a look, particularly, it's been shown that large firms, or what they assume to be large firms, have been accumulating like crazy. So much so that of all the Bitcoin mined since last year, so you go back a year to the last time that Bitcoin was kind of in that 8,000 range as it was about to go on its way down. Well, people started accumulating, and in fact, nearly half of all the Bitcoin mined in that period has been accumulated in wallet addresses that hold between 1,000 and 10,000 Bitcoin. Not 1,000, $10,000, 1,000 and 10,000 Bitcoin. And those size of wallets are typically attributed to large investment firms, meaning that those Bitcoin are actually divvied up amongst the investors in the firm. So those Bitcoin are kind of, I guess the price exposure is amongst many individuals, not single individuals. And so that's why looking at Bitcoin wallet addresses and the volume of Bitcoin going into and out of them is not always telling, because you're never quite sure whether that's just a whale, somebody that's in super early that's moving Bitcoin around, or whether it's a large firm that is accounting for multiple people. And so in this instance, it looks to be, given that it's being currently accumulated at current prices, odds are these are large firms with large amounts of capital that are starting to dive in. Just a couple numbers here. Yeah, so since the start of 2019, around 40% of the Bitcoin that has been newly minted through inflation has been accumulated by firm-size wallets, over 100,000 Bitcoin. Since the beginning of 2019, that's what firms supposedly or assumedly have been hodling. Yeah, so pretty crazy, but it just kind of shows that larger firms and investors are becoming privy to this, and they apparently are seeing value in it. If they're stocking up as it's on the way down and during the lows of the bear market, then clearly they see potential that it will rise again. And I mean, for the firms that were stocking up in November, December, January, basically over the past year, they've been proven right. And if they've been kind of dollar cost averaging over time into it, then they've done quite well for themselves. So fantastic. And just a fun note here. Remember this guy, Brad Sherman? He's the guy that called for Congress to ban all Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Yeah, well, Bitcoin's up 50% since he said that. So, okay, so this one, there's a guy from Nevada, and this was a little while back, but he was looking to build a Bitcoin mega city, and he was selling plots of land for Bitcoin. Well, he's going to jail. He also did a trading business via LocalBitcoins where he was buying and selling Bitcoin. Well, so why is he going to jail? It's not necessarily because of him buying and selling Bitcoin, but more so to do with the real estate aspect of what he was doing. So he bought just shy of 5 acres. And that's where he was planning on setting up his Bitcoin city, where Bitcoin would be the local currency and would be by default accepted and everything. Problem was, he only had 5 acres, but he sold 18. So he was selling stuff he didn't have. The investors never got, their slips to own the land, the deeds to the land, and started complaining. Not only that, but when he was doing LocalBitcoins, now this in and itself, it's not that people aren't allowed to charge fees, but his fees for his... Oh man, there it is. Okay, he was charging 36% premium on his Bitcoin when he was selling it. That's just kind of a dick move. Now, it was more to do with the volume of Bitcoin that he was moving that he probably got the attention. At one point, he was basically the largest individual mover of Bitcoin in his state, and he had around 1,000 transactions. But apparently he definitely needed a money transmitting license to do so. It's scary in the States because it's different from state to state, and you're never quite sure. I'm sure if he had just been a regular guy doing, the odd transaction here and there, just with people kind of through the grapevine, he would have been fine, but he was doing quite a lot of business and attracting a lot of attention. In fact, even replying to Donald Trump on Twitter, saying thanks for coming to the area. Not that Donald Trump came to visit him, but was campaigning there. He said, we're building a brand new mega city that will provide millions of jobs for Americans in the immediate future thanks to Bitcoin. And, tagged his Bitcointopia Twitter account and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, not a great thing to be doing when you're selling something you don't have and essentially committing fraud. So regardless, he is going to jail for 21 months. In fact, I think he's already there. He also appealed to everybody to write character witnesses for the trial back in April. Well, it looks like that didn't really happen. There wasn't a whole lot of sympathy. And then obviously the people that invested in his idea had never gotten their money back. They were paying Bitcoin for the land. Now, as far as the prices of the land, just to give you an idea, he bought the 5 acres at a price of around $877 an acre, whereas he was selling it at a premium of around 260%. So, I don't know. When you read some of the articles about this, the the headlines can be a little bit sensational because they focus on the local Bitcoins trader is now going to prison, but that's really not the focus of why he got pinched. It was to do with him selling land that he didn't own. So, yeah, anyways, I kind of feel like this is deserved. He swindled people out of money and gave them nothing. So, yeah. Anyways, Facebook. I haven't really touched on this because I just don't care. But just a little bit of information. Facebook is launching a cryptocurrency, I guess, via their platform, and they are calling it Global Coin, which is the most tepid, kind of non-appealing name I could think of. It just sounds so corporate. Anyways, of course it sounds corporate, but anyway, so the demographics are just not looking great. So Facebook alone, the user base is getting older. There's still got, a fair amount of people kind of 25 to 34, but the younger people are not using it, and they're going to be kind of coming into this, and it's looking like odds are the demographics are not in their favor in terms of launching a global cryptocurrency. In fact, you want the younger generation to look to what you're doing, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. The younger generation will be the ones that make the decisions very shortly. And when you have a dwindling user base that are kind of favoring alternative platforms that kind of view Facebook as the old incumbent that they're not really interested in. I mean, how many younger people than you do you know that are on Facebook all the time? Like, I barely touch Facebook unless I'm sharing links to a video, and then I kind of get out of it right away. So I don't look at Facebook really anymore. And yeah, so it's just not great. And not only that, but it appears that the demographics of younger people that are using it tend to be lower income rather than higher income households. And, not to balk at the fact that lower income people are using it, but when you're trying to launch something that's based on payments and moving money, then you're not typically going after lower income. You're going after people that have and use a lot of money. So both of those things together don't bode well. But I'm sure regardless, given Facebook's current reach, Global Coin will have some sort of an impact. But again, remember, you're using a walled garden permissioned coin that really doesn't exude much of the ethos behind Bitcoin. So take that for what it is. And finally here, U.S. Congress has been looking and using a think tank, and they claim that Bitcoin is used mostly as an investment vehicle, which I can't really argue with. But really, Bitcoin can be used in a number of ways. You can use it as an investment. You can use it as a hedge against global recession, against your fiat currency. You can use it as a hedge against hyperinflation in areas like Venezuela and Argentina, which Argentina is now seeing new all-time highs of Bitcoin versus the Argentinian peso, primarily because of the poor performance of the peso paired with the decent run-up in Bitcoin. So, in terms of dollars, Bitcoin is nowhere near its all-time high again because the US dollar hasn't inflated as quickly as some other countries. But when you look at the chart in Argentina, you see the 2017 spike, and then you see what is now looking like the 2019 spike, but it's just because the asset that Bitcoin is being traded against is losing value versus Bitcoin gaining value, although both are happening. So yes, is Bitcoin mostly an investment vehicle right now? Yeah, Yeah, I mean, we just talked about how whales have been accumulating, how a lot of funds have been stacking a ton of sats, I guess, in for their clients. So yeah, it is largely an investment vehicle right now. Will that morph over time? Absolutely, and people will use it where it makes sense the most. For me, I see this as a potential monetization event where Bitcoin becomes a global currency and perhaps the de facto global sound money. As that's happening, I want to hold on to it as much as possible. And so I'm going to be very averse to spending it unless there's a specific incentive for me to do so. So perhaps some merchant that doesn't accept anything but Bitcoin that has something that I value, then sure, I will use Bitcoin. Perhaps it's easier for me to go between various currencies while traveling using Bitcoin. So I've done that before where I traveled Southeast Asia and I had, I was in the UK and I had Wirex offered a Visa card that was in various different local currencies. So I believe they had a US dollar card, a euro card, and a British pound card. And so when I was in England, I was able to use Bitcoin and just convert into the local currency and use that everywhere, other than a conversion fee, which wasn't much. There was essentially nothing else really for me to worry about there as far as fees go, and it worked just like a regular Visa card. Whereas had I gone to the bank and said, hey, I want to change $1,000 for British pounds, well, that would have come with a much heftier $30, $40, $50, $60 fee, depending on where I got it done. So yeah, in instances where it makes sense, people will spend Bitcoin, but in instances where it makes more sense to hold and use it as a long-term investment, they will do that too. And I think over time, as more liquidity flows into Bitcoin and it grows in market cap and those insane gains, like in a few decades, you're probably not going to be seeing the kind of gains that you see year to year in Bitcoin right now if it continues to grow, because it'll kind of get to a plateau where you, ideally, where you just enjoy kind of a gradual deflation and it just goes up in value a bit more predictably, and it becomes the new gold. But until that time, people are going to be likely to hold on to it longer and probably a little averse to selling it via purchasing other items. So yeah, and once that calms down and well, maybe there's a general deflation of around 2 or 3% every year, perhaps. Well, at that point, you're not as worried about spending. Sure, you might think about it a little bit more of, should I save my money or do I need this item? But you're not going to be as averse to spending it because you're not going to go, well, it might go up 50% this month. So I think that will be alleviated over time. So use case changes and morphs with time as incentives vary, we'll say. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you're new to the channel, be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification, because I'm always in the side chat chatting the first time this airs. And hit my website, hit ledn.io if you're looking for a Bitcoin-backed loan. And if you really liked what you saw, of course, do feel free to drop me a Bitcoin tip via Lightning Network using my tippin.me page, and I will link a video in the cards if you are unfamiliar how that works. And with that, I am out, guys. Thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow for your daily session.